Today we are going to read our extended read 2 called the Paper Dinosaurs in our Buyers and Sellers Close Reader on page 30. And in this text is fantasy, which means there's going to be some magical elements to it. So watch for that to see which pieces of this text are fantasy. Because in these pictures here, it just looks like kind of a normal day at school, right? Not a lot of magic happening, so we'll have to wait and see which pieces are the fantasy pieces. So go ahead and listen to the Paper Dinosaurs. Follow along in your own close reader.
Extended Read 2. Remember to annotate as you read.
The Paper Dinosaurs by Janine Scott. It was easy to spot the Room 3 children. They were the ones walking through the school gates with old newspapers. Their teacher, Mrs. Adams, had made it last night's homework to raid their paper recycle bins. Later that morning, Mrs. Adams said, "Let's make new things from old newspapers. Then we can sell what we make at the school fair. That will help pay for a trip to the Science Museum. Who has an idea?" Some children suggested decorating photo frames with the old newspapers. Others talked about making paper jewelry or kites. Then Amy said, "Let's make paper dinosaurs. We'll see dinosaurs at the Science Museum." Everyone loved that idea. With Mrs. Adams's help, Amy showed the class how to make a dinosaur from old newspapers. First, they tore some newspapers into strips. Next, they rolled other pieces into balls. "The balls will be the dinosaur's head and body," Amy explained. Then, she dipped the paper strips into glue and placed them around the balls. Before long, a dinosaur took shape.
All right, before we move forward, I want to talk about a couple of things. One is I had a connection right here. Hopefully you did too. This reminded me of our essential question for our matter unit on how does something old become something new. Remember that essential question? That's what they're doing here with these newspapers. They're going to take them and recycle them, reuse them to make paper dinosaurs. That was Amy's idea. They're going to make paper dinosaurs. And then it does tell us, gives us some sequencing words here to tell you how it happened. So first they tore newspapers into strips, then they rolled other pieces into balls. Here's a then. That would be 3. She dipped the paper strips into glue and placed them around the ball. And then before long, a dinosaur took shape. Before long is kind of another signal word that some time has passed, but maybe not necessarily a step in that process. Okay, so no fantasy elements yet. This is all realistic fiction to this point. So let's keep reading to find out which part was the realist or the fantasy.
"It's your turn now," Mrs. Adams told the class. "Look at the dinosaur books in the library. Choose your favorite dinosaur to make." Meanwhile, Mrs. Adams played video clips of dinosaurs on the interactive whiteboard. As the children worked, different dinosaurs tromped across the screen. Toby liked the dinosaur with a frill and 3 horns on its head. Maria chose the dinosaur with plates down its body. Amy liked the littlest dinosaur that ever roamed Earth. For hours, the children piled on layers of newspaper strips and glue to make tails, plates, scales, horns, and frills. By the end of the day, dinosaurs of all shapes and sizes sat by the art corner window. They needed to dry overnight. Later that night, Earth's shadow fell on a blue moon. The moon shone on the paper dinosaurs. A purple light glowed, and the dinosaurs twitched. The movement was so tiny that if you had blinked, you would have missed it. The dinosaurs twitched again. Then they moved even more. Their tails thumped on the art table. Their claws scraped along the surface. Their jaws opened so they could talk. The moon's eerie glow barely lit up the classroom. The dinosaurs stumbled about in the dark. Some trudged across the teacher's table. Others leaped from desk to desk. Then, accidentally, one stepped on a computer mouse. Suddenly, dinosaurs 100 times bigger than the paper dinosaurs charged toward them. Loud roars from the gigantic beasts on screen filled the classroom.
Okay, so again, still pretty much realistic fiction here. They're choosing their favorite dinosaurs to make out of the newspapers. It takes them a long time to do this, right? It says 4 hours it takes that amount of time. And then it says later that night, Earth's shadow fell on the blue moon. A moon shone on the paper dinosaurs. A purple light glowed, and the dinosaurs twitched. The movement was so tiny that if you'd blinked, you would have missed it. They twitched again, then even more. And then suddenly these dinosaurs come to life, and they get larger than large and then come to life. Now, so far, it hasn't told us how necessarily this has happened, but I can infer that it might have something to do with the moon, because the author has mentioned that there was a blue moon and that the moon shone on the paper dinosaurs, and then the purple light glowed and the dinosaurs twitched. So my guess is that the moon has something to do with these paper dinosaurs becoming like these gigantic beasts, right, that are now moving around on the screen. So let's keep listening.
"Run for your lives!" cried the biggest paper dinosaur. The paper dinosaurs dived under desks and into cupboards. They hid behind books. The smallest paper dinosaur stepped in some leftover glue and paper. She was so scared she didn't feel the squishy, slushy paper beneath her foot. Luckily for the paper dinosaurs, the video was only a minute long. Soon, the classroom was silent. There was just one giant dinosaur on the screen. Its huge jaws and claws were ready for fighting, but it looked as if it were frozen in time. "Quick!" cried the biggest paper dinosaur. "The moon is disappearing. Let's go back to where we were." The paper dinosaurs left their hiding places. They had to remember where the children had put them on the art table. They were happy when the yellow sun replaced the moon in the sky. The sun's warm rays helped dry their paper bodies. There would be no more twitching now. "Look!" cried Amy as she walked into class. "Our dinosaurs have set." "Perfect," said Mrs. Adams. "Now we can paint them." As Amy reached for the paint, she saw a small dinosaur footprint in some newspaper. "That's strange," she said. "I don't remember making this." In her excitement, Amy forgot all about it. The footprint had given her an idea. "Mrs. Adams," she cried, "I know another thing we could make with old newspapers." What's that? Asked Mrs. Adams. Dinosaur footprint fossils, yelled Amy. Great idea, said Toby. We could have a dinosaur dig at the fair. People could pay to dig for fossils buried in sand. The class bubbled over with excitement about the dinosaur dig. They had lots to do, though. They had to finish their dinosaurs and start making footprint fossils. The children researched dinosaur footprints on the computer. They learned that some dinosaurs had feet the size of chickens' feet. The children made footprint fossils in the mushy newspaper. Toby was right. The dinosaur dig was a huge success. People loved discovering Room 3's footprint fossils. The Room 3 children got the same feeling when they visited the Science Museum a week later. Giant dinosaurs towered above them in the dinosaur hall. They were impressive, but the children were most impressed with one of the littlest dinosaur displays. It was a fossil of a tiny dinosaur's footprint. In fact, Amy thought it looked exactly like the footprint she had found. Of course, that wouldn't be possible. Or would it?
Okay, so we saw the fantasy part here, right? These paper dinosaurs are coming to life. They accidentally hit the mouse, which turns the dinos back onto the screen that the teacher had up, and so they're running for their lives. They're scared, and they're hiding. And this littlest dinosaur happens to step on some paper and leaves a footprint behind, which Amy doesn't remember making because she didn't, right? Because these dinosaurs have come to life. Now, it did say that the sun's warm rays helped dry their paper bodies, which means there'd be no more twitching now. So we talked about on the last page how the moon had something to do with them coming to life, and the sun has something to do with them staying as statues now, right? So that's kind of interesting how that plays together. But this gives Amy an idea. And so they start to do something else with old newspapers, and that's to make dinosaur footprint fossils. And so that's what they start doing now. They're going to research and make some fossils. And they get to go to the Science Museum and see the giant dinosaurs. And Amy finds this little fossil right here that looks exactly like the footprint she had found. And so now she's kind of thinking that something fishy might be up, right? And she is correct. She doesn't know, however, that these paper dinosaurs came to life that night and ran from the dinosaurs on the screen. I do want to talk about a couple of things. One is I want to think about how we could describe Amy. Okay, what character traits could we say to describe her? This is something that sometimes we struggle with, but I want you to think about what she does. She was the one who came up with the idea originally, right? So I would say that she is creative, right? She came up with that idea. I would say that she is a leader. She was at the front of the class there, sharing her ideas. I would say that she is smart. Right? She's really thinking about things and looking closely, learning new ways to do things, coming up with new ideas. So those would all be ways that we could describe Amy. You wouldn't describe Amy as mean, right? There's no evidence of that in the text. We probably wouldn't describe her as shy. There's no evidence of that in the text, but we could find evidence for these three words, creative, leader, and smart, within our text. I also wanted to look at one other thing before we finish up here, and that is compound words. So we've talked a little bit about compound words. That's when those two words are squished together to make a new word, like homework, right? Another one would be newspapers. And when they're squished together like that, those two words that have separate meanings now have a new meaning. So homework is work that you do at home. Newspapers are papers that have the news, and so forth. So I'm going to have you look through, see if you can find some more compound words in the Paper Dinosaurs, and then you're also going to go in and do your response to the Paper Dinosaurs as well.